All righty, welcome. I'm Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington, serving online information entrepreneurs throughout the US and the world. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. I am super excited today to welcome Alane Boyd to the podcast. Welcome, Alane.
Thank you, Heather. I'm so excited about being here.
Oh my gosh, so great to have you. And I hope people cannot hear the vacuuming happening in the background. Can you hear that? Okay.
That's a good sign.
We're keeping it real. You should know that I launched this podcast after COVID started with 2 kids at home full time. I never knew what was going to happen in the background. We've since added a dog and we've got house cleaners here, which hallelujah. We were just talking about the importance of support in our life, and I will celebrate that one all day long.
Me too.
But I apologize if there's a little bit of vacuuming noise. So Alane, so we first connected through, who introduced us? I'm trying to think back.
Justin Crane.
Justin Crane, that's right. Brought us
Yes.
together on a group call. I love Justin. By the way, if you're listening and you want to meet Justin, you should. He's another conversation on the podcast. I will actually share the link to Justin's episode. He lives in the financial space, but he knows so many awesome people, and he brought Alane and I together along with several others. That's been a few months now, but Alane, for those of you that don't know Alane, you're going to love her bio because she is truly an entrepreneur. Alane is a serial entrepreneur, passionate leader, and a high growth founder. So 2 times SaaS exit, published author on 3 occasions, a top leaders 40 under 40 finalist and top companies to watch 2021, voted best tools for remote work. That's awesome in 2022. She is an Enneagram 3 with a driver leadership style. She is a visionary that believes in impact-driven, result-oriented leadership. Her skill sets focus on operations, sales, marketing, and technical skills. She likes to use her time to guide and mentor others, whether in her company or other founders, to grow and scale their abilities. Alane has been written and featured in Entrepreneur, Huffington Post, South by Southwest, PBS, Today in Nashville, Talk of the Town, Parent Magazine, Femme Founder, Tennessee Magazine, and many more. And you currently are running 2 businesses, right, Alane? Do you want to mention briefly? I know we didn't get to that in your very long bio. I'm kidding. I love your bio. But you've got not 1 company, but 2. Do you want to briefly mention those?
Yeah, and they work together because one came out of the other one. So I own a consulting company where we come in and help businesses use AI and automation, improve their workflows, and just alleviate some of that manual work. And so that's BGBO Co. And we can get into why we named that in another podcast or later on. But then while we were doing all this consulting, we started this company out of, I sold my other 2 companies. And so I was retired and people were asking me to come in and consult. And so I was like, well, I'm not doing anything. Okay. And so I started doing that. And then COVID happened and we exploded because everybody was trying to figure out how to go to remote, how to support their teams. And my co-founder and I we had both exited and we were working together in this company. And he's like, I think we have another software play, because teams are really needing a more visual, a more skimmable way to get a knowledge base, to get how-tos and training. So we built Arvo, which is our software platform. So they go hand in hand. A lot of times when we work with companies, we'll start with one and then they'll use the other one or vice versa. But it's all about helping companies improve their operations.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, it sounds like you were doing AI before AI was cool.
I was. I know somebody asked me the other day, how long have you been using AI? And I think they were expecting me to say like 3 months or 6 months. I was like, 2 years.
Yeah, right. It exploded.
I mean, it's amazing.
End of last year, I
the
feel
way
like.
that it did. Yeah. But that it still did exist in some capacity. A lot of it's definitely exploded in a positive way where it's gotten better and more useful, but it still had some really good use cases, before it really got popular and big. So
Well, and it's interesting because I think even now, and I belong to a book club where we dissect artificial intelligence and all kinds of topics related to AI, and even defining what AI is can be a challenge, even in the world of people who are experts at AI. And really, when you think of artificial intelligence, we all have been living with and benefiting from AI for quite some time, right?
Yeah,
You think of any technology device that is designed on automation or designed to communicate with another device so that you don't have to, right? And it makes our lives
right.
easier. It's but the new round, the level, 3.0 chat GPT and other tools have really brought it to the forefront, and I think made issues surrounding AI, surrounding privacy, all of these relevant topics, like much more kind of in your face.
Yeah, I saw a great post from you actually. I think it was yesterday. It was one day this week about, what don't you want to put in AI, which is
Mm.
extremely valuable. I think people are like, I'm just going to put everything in there, not really thinking about what they should be considering. And I saw your post and I was like,
Mm.
this is exactly what everybody that uses ChatGPT or other AI platforms needs to be considering.
Yeah, well, it's so fascinating, especially in the world of small business. Like, it's interesting because you look at companies like Samsung, Google, major companies who've restricted their employees from using certain AI tools, and by far the widely available ones like ChatGPT, because guess what?
They
Their
don't
fear
want.
of disclosing trade secrets because
Yes.
people use it the wrong way. And it's like, folks, I want to scream from the mountaintops. Like, these are some of the biggest, best, strongest companies in the world. And they're putting a big, big, thick iron door between their employees and AI. And there's a reason for that. And then you've got all these smaller, like we'll just call them small business and smaller startups, entrepreneurs, throwing everything into
Everything in
AI,
there.
everything.
Yeah.
And it's like all for the sake of, I feel like, speed. And let's be clear that speed can help with certain things. It should not replace everything. Speed is not the number one priority. Anyways, yeah, I could go on and on. It's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I see it on one side, like, man, business owners, it is a great level playing field for people. If you're not a
Mm.
great writer and you want a press release and you are a small business and you don't have the funds, great, have it write you a press release. Like, there's so many great applications. But at the same time, I see it with small business owners where they're like, I'm just going to put every experiment, they're kind of more experimental with things where I'm just going to throw everything in there. I'm like, oh my God, no, let's not do that.
Yeah, don't put your best ideas in there. Don't put your developed IP. Don't put your procedures and your 7-step formula and blah, 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 because whatever it is that makes you the secret sauce, as soon as you've put it into Chat GPT or another open AI, it's gone. You've
Yeah.
lost your trade secret. It is basically in the public domain. Other people are now going to benefit from outputs based on your inputs. You have no
Hmm.
control over what you've
Yeah.
just done. Anyways, well, we should separately have a chat just about AI because you've been doing it before it was cool, and I'm sure we could all learn a thing or two. But I would love to know, because you are a woman in tech, and that can be a tough place to be for women. And I'd love to hear about your route into entrepreneurship, into tech. I'd love to hear from you a bit about your background and how you landed in this space.
Yeah, it was kind of a whimsical move. I don't really take decisions like life decisions too seriously when it comes to what am I going to do. I always know I'm going to eventually land on my feet. It might be a little
Mm.
messy, but I'm well educated. I'm relatively smart most days, like, I'm going to figure it out. So I don't really feel like, oh man, I've got to have this path and it has to work out like this.
Mm.
And so I went into engineering, and I'll say I hated being an engineer, and I ended up not being an engineer, even though I have a degree in it. But I took a class for us to get our bachelor's degree. We had to take a basic coding class. And I think at this point in every college educated person's lives, they need to take this course because it was so beneficial. I could go in for like email marketing. When email marketing first came out, you didn't have these beautiful templates. You were writing HTML code. Well, you know what? Marketing people make mistakes, or designers make mistakes. And instead of me having to send something back to our design team, I could just go in and edit it and move on. And so that was really what kind of got me going in tech. And so I started working for a company in San Diego that they had a software platform. They were a social media management company before social media was even a thing. And just started working my way up. And then the founder of the company, one day I said, you hired a bunch of losers. We are redoing this entire company. We're gutting it, and we're going to start over because you're terrible at hiring. And if I leave you, you're going to be in a bad situation. And he said, I'm not losing you. Let's do it. I am bad at hiring. And so we gutted the company slowly. We didn't just rip everybody out at once, but we slowly started gutting people. We became co-founders of the company together, and we rebuilt it all. And
oh my gosh,
it was so fun. That's what, like, thinking about those days, like I was 26, I think, like I didn't know that much. I had a couple of small businesses before that I'd done in a different industry, but man, we would like rearrange our office so that we could have better think tanks, and like trying to just get more out of our heads. And how do we hire the people that we need? We have no budget at all. And so we figured it out, and we ran that company together till we didn't have fun anymore. And it
oh
was,
wow,
I was so burnt out by the end.
oh goodness, yeah.
So I got in a very long tangent. Your question was about being a woman in tech. How's it like? You know what? At the end of the day, I love it. I've got more opportunity than I've ever had being in an industry. And I even say it's my superpower, because there's so many men, and it's so male dominated, and men get tired of talking to other men, just like,
right.
in a woman dominated industry. It's kind of nice when there's a man around, you like diversity. And
Yes.
I've found mentors come out and help me more than, if I was just another man, I'm just out there in a sea of other men. But when I'm a female and with a bunch of other men, then there's always a guy in there that's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to help you. Come meet this person. They want to hang out with me, whatever it is.
Of course they do. I know. No, I'm kidding. But yes, it's a breath of fresh air. Totally. 1 second. My son just told me that I have Seattle City Light at our door. We had a big accident with a telephone pole in front, not ours, somebody else. Give me 1 second. I'm so sorry about this. I don't know what they're doing, but I assume it's about that. 1 sec.
Okay. Okay.
Well, first of all, I love that you, and even it sounds like early in your career, because you said you were mid-20s, that you were a woman that had a voice in tech, right? I think a lot of women feel like they don't have a voice, or they're not listened to. And so the fact that you could raise that with your boss who agreed with you, and hiring, I feel like, is a whole separate conversation. Although we should touch on that, because it's part of what you built out, right? Was to support the hiring process and have that go better for businesses. Like, what a major pain point. But back to the point, he listened to you, and then you go on to become a co-founder.
Yeah. I mean, people dream of that scenario, and somehow I made it happen. But there are opportunities out there. And I really think that, not that it can play out that way in every small business, but I think that's the opportunity that small businesses give you, is to have that voice, to gain your confidence. And it took a while. It wasn't like the second day I went into work and said, hey, you've done a terrible job of hiring. This was after a year. And that day I just was like, I can't do this anymore. Nobody is working behind the scenes. I'm carrying the load. But for a small business, you get to wear a lot of hats. You get to find where your skill set is, and you can help mold the company and continue moving up if that's what you want to do. And that's where it really benefited me. Whereas I don't think I would have thrived in a corporate environment. If I go in and tell my boss, you're firing everybody, that's not going to happen. I'll get fired probably.
Right, but even in the context of a small business, that's a pretty big deal, right? For him to be like, "Oh my gosh, you're right. I have been hiring poorly. This is not working." So I'm curious, once you went through that process of letting people go and rebuilding, how did you help ensure that it went better the second time?
I have a little bit better intuition and the questions that
Mm,
I asked. And, you listen for the red flags where my co founder, he would hear the things he wanted to and ignore the other red flags. And I'm like, I
mm,
remember we got in an argument over this one lady he wanted to hire. I was like, she literally said she did not want to travel. This position, you have to travel at a minimum 25% of the job. Really,
mm,
50% of the time we want them traveling. So no, we're not hiring. She'd be miserable. She would last for a few
mm.
months and then quit. And so it's like those things he needed to be better trained on listening for, where that became more natural to me. And we implemented paychecks was a big HR, and they're still big, but he was smart at the time where he realized, well, man, we need some better training. We got interview trained, we got employee handbooks created, and so that we could have more consistency when we were
Yeah.
hiring, the kind of questions that you shouldn't ask, the kind of questions you should ask. And we
Yeah.
just started getting better at that. We weren't perfect, but we hired so much better.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a process, all of that just takes time and effort and the willingness of somebody to spearhead it and get that stuff in place. So, but it's a huge accomplishment when you do. And like, what a way to improve your potential growth if you do hire better.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we realized later on, I mean, we got to 125 employees with that company before we sold. And what we
Mm,
realized, and for it's so nice when you do have a co-founder because you can't see everything,
yes.
and I remember we were starting to grow more and more, and so we were hiring faster. And
Mm,
so we needed better employee training, but also like sometimes we hired people and they weren't great at that job. And so
yeah.
like, we'd have to fire. And one day my co-founder and I are in a meeting and he goes, you know, we've got really loyal employees that they aren't always great at the job they were hired for, but we're big enough now, we could put them in a different department.
Move them
Instead of,
around.
that hire, like even just knowing how you do things in your company, not even necessarily for their job, but if you use a
Mm,
work management system, if you use a ticketing system, all these things, we've been training them for a while. They know how to do everything in the company. They're just not good at the job we hired them for. And when we started making those changes and we could better identify, okay, they thought they wanted to do this and we thought they were going to be good at it, but actually they're not. They're actually pretty good at this other thing.
yeah.
Let's move them. And so that really alleviated a lot of growing pains that we had too when we could do transitions.
Oh, you bring up such a good point. It reminds me of the book I read, Good to Great by
I
Jim
love that book.
Collins, that talks about that. Like just putting the right seats on the bus, like step number
Mhm.
one, but then getting people into the right seat, right? Being able to move them around and jostle them around. I think when you're of a size where you finally have the flexibility to do that, makes all the difference.
It does. It made a huge difference. And we started having employees, when we sold, like our average number of years they were with us was like, we had one that had been with us for 7 years. Our company was only 11 years old. So our average employee was with
Yeah.
us for 4 years when we sold. Like what we really tried to build, we didn't have this fun culture by any means. We weren't like I don't spend a lot of time in like, okay, let's do this bonding thing. Like that's not my personality. But my
Mm-hmm.
personality is I want you to enjoy the people you're working with and I want you to be able to leave work. You know what's
Yeah.
miserable? Answering emails at 8 p.m. when you're there with your family. And we were going through a period of time where our workers were doing that. And I'm like, I don't want to be doing that. I'm burnt out. I don't want to expect anybody that. So we always were trying to work on that part of our culture. How can we make it a better that work-life balance that I don't know that really
Mm.
exists, but that our employees can leave work and that when they go on vacation, they can go on vacation. And so we just did a
Yes.
lot of those systems so that our work days were easier and it played into after we sold, what did we want to do with our lives, and why we went the route that we did and built Arvo, was because those operations and those things, if they know how to do their job and they can leave their job at the end of the day, that is a happy employee. They didn't have to
Yes.
ask 50 questions to find the information. They could just go into work, they can get their job done, they could be creative when they can have they have the mental capacity to do it and the time, and then they can go home and enjoy their time with their family.
Yeah. It's so important. I remember having a conversation with somebody years ago about, like, I can't remember if it was the employee, like their belief that employees should make the employer believe they're so indispensable, right? They could never operate without them. I'm like, well, like, I get it, and I don't really feel like that's the right solution, because employees do need to go on vacation. They do need to be away from their jobs for a period, and the company does still need to run. It is really about having it be a win-win,
Yeah.
where you have people that enjoy their work while they're at work, but they don't feel like they can't have a life beyond that. And I think that is really typical old company culture,
Yeah.
this whole, like, and COVID, I mean, I feel like COVID blew up some things. And I mean, that's a whole different conversation, because in some ways, I think it made people really realize how blended our work and home lives are. And even for
Hmm.
those of us who worked from home pre-COVID, COVID just brought it to a new level of intensity, where you realize how much effort it actually takes to have clear boundaries between home and personal time and work time, and the importance of that. And as parents, we need the flexibility for those things to blend, right? So
Yeah.
it's a trade-off, and getting the balance right is not always an easy path. But I think also companies, I would say, in the last couple years, so many people have experienced burnout, right? And you mentioned having gone through
Yeah.
burnout
Oh,
on your
yeah.
journey as well. I feel like that's such a big, important topic, and it will continue to be as people navigate, how do we do this quote unquote work-life balance that never really feels very balanced.
Yeah. I mean, that's the great thing about tech and the worst thing about tech, because
Yes.
you can work from anywhere, so you do have flexibility. But the problem is you can work from anywhere, so you never really work. So it was, that was just something that we really wanted to work towards. And we were talking about burnout. I have to be cautious of myself. I have to end work at a certain time so that I don't get, I get excited just like everybody else about things like, oh, I want to get this done. But at some point, you do get burned out. And so
Yes.
I don't want to reach that point again. I want to be
Mm-mm.
cautious of the feelings that I'm having, the emotions that I'm having, so
Mm,
that I don't have such big highs and lows, that
totally.
I am moving at a good pace for me, and that's sustainable for me.
And as a mom and an entrepreneur and somebody, I mean, who is running multiple businesses, are there routines, tools? Like, how do you help keep that in check? Are there things that you do that really help you keep that in balance, or help you notice when it's starting to get out of balance?
Yeah, I mean, I have a work calendar, a personal calendar, and so does my husband, so that I everything that we're doing is on a calendar so that I can manage time appropriately, and that there's never a miscommunication on what who's available and what needs to get done.
Mm,
My husband takes our son to school in the morning, so I have that time for myself, and I'm the one that picks him up and does the afternoon. So, like, we have a set schedule that it makes things understandable. And then I use a work management system for work and for personal life. Like, to me,
mm,
you have work in your personal life, that like a travel checklist. I have a travel
yeah.
checklist every time I travel. I don't need to recreate it. It's all in my work management system. I just hit duplicate and it has my entire checklist on there. So it's those things that have made my life easier. I'm not having to chase things down. I have visuals, communication with my significant other. And I don't work when I have my son anymore. It is so stressful for me to try to do both. He's 7. He does not understand the concept of do not interrupt me.
Yes.
You know, oh, like, here's a cheese stick. Do not interrupt me. And he's like, well, I ate that. Can I have another? I'm like, what is the problem?
Oh my
Maybe when he's
gosh.
8. There's hope.
Right. You just described everybody's experience working from home during COVID. Like, kids and boundaries don't go together very well. It's a really challenging thing to actually achieve. But I love that you brought up systems, right? Here we are again with systems. And I'd love to know, where did you recognize in your journey? Because being in tech, I think you really, to thrive there, probably have to be systems oriented, right?
Yeah.
Where did you recognize that you had a systems brain, or that you really understood systems? Because your business is based entirely around systematizing things, right? For other
Yeah,
people.
yeah, that's exactly what we do.
Mhm.
If you met me outside of work, you would not think I was that. I'm pretty chaotic. I am not a house cleaner. I'm very spontaneous. And if you tell me plan something, I'm like, oh my God, I cringe. But my but but I
Which,
have
by the way, you should know is just human nature. I was doing a whole bunch of reading on this
thank you. That
yesterday.
actually brings me comfort.
Yes, planning is not something as humans that we do very well, because it is anxiety provoking. So it kind of like, it's a little bit like whiplash, like you're forcing yourself to do something that's going to give you anxiety and a little bit of like, "Ooh," and that's just how it
Yeah.
goes.
Well, that makes me feel better. But what I first realized, so when we started hiring the new team,
Mhm.
and at the same time we're hiring new team members, we're also growing. We're growing faster than we can keep up with. This one client was a large automotive group, and they just kept giving us more and more and more and more work. So I'm hiring new team members, and I'm handling our corporate contracts and the corporate people that keep bringing us more work. And there's only so much of me in a day. And so back then, this was, I don't know, over 12 years ago, so probably 14 years ago now, there was not the tech that exists today. So I built our how-to social media manual. We started social media management before social media management was even the term. We
Yeah,
called it
right.
social arena marketing. Like, this is how new we were to the game.
Social arena marketing. I think we should
Yeah, it
go
was
back to
close.
that, right?
So, I printed out manuals and binders for our team members so that when we had to create a new Facebook page for a new client, they had their how to do it, their how to, and their process all there. Now, as everyone probably can imagine at this point, printing that out and keeping it up to date for social media was super hard. So as more technology came out, there was online knowledge bases. And so we moved all of that. We actually hired a part-time worker from a temp agency to come in and get all of my Microsoft Docs into our
Into
knowledge base. And that's the key. Like, I didn't put the burden on a team member that's already exhausted. Like, how can you cheaply and efficiently do something? We hired a temp worker. She got it done in like 40 hours. So it took us like
mm,
less than 2 weeks. She came in, she was phenomenal. We ended up hiring her full time. She stuck with us till we did our exit. She stayed on with the company a little bit further. And just a random story about, like, just the amazing universe. I was in Chicago. I told when we were chatting before our podcast, I was in Chicago for a week this summer. I was at an AI summit that I was speaking at, and I'm there, and I turn around and I see her across the room in Chicago. I
don't
like
you love that when you see
Yeah, it's
people
like
out of
I just
context?
parted the sea of people, and I was like, "Crystal." She like, we both just like Barbie doll girl screamed
That,
because it was just the most random circumstance. Neither one of us knew we were gonna be
love
there.
that.
We were in San Diego when we met. We're here in Chicago, so it was just such a cool random thing that happened.
Yeah, that is so fun. The universe is fun like that. Um, well, it's, hearing about your journey, there's so many themes. I mean, I think a lot of women in particular, but humans in general, I think can relate to, various parts of it. And I think when it comes to small business, so often it is about figuring out like where to put your resources so that you're using everything efficiently, right? And systems are paramount. And I think they're really hard for people to get right sometimes. And
Mhm.
it's not like set it and forget it. You don't just put a system in place and then it just runs and you never revisit it and things are hunky dory, right? So they're constantly needing updating and nurturing and eyeballs on them to make sure that they're current.
Yeah. I mean, it does feel overwhelming at times when you think about it like that, because it does, things change. There's not,
Mm.
and even if it's not like Pipedrive, like you use Pipedrive CRM, you put a how-to, it's not always that the system that you're using changes and you need to update the how-to. It's that you as a business changes.
Yeah.
And you need to update how you do things and how you want your team to handle things. And so that does feel a little bit of a burden. Now, that's also a benefit of AI and how we're using AI.
Yes. Well, I was
So
going to say, maybe you could spend a few minutes and speak to both Arvo and BGBO and how you make those processes easier for your clients.
yeah, so one of the things that we do with both companies, and whether you just want to use the software or you want us to help actually build out the process, is all you have to do is record a video. You don't have to actually document everything. And so, we can do meetings, but if you take a Loom video, Loom is pretty popular these days.
Yep.
So take a Loom video, 25-minute recording of you walking through the process. You might feel like, man, that was 25 minutes. That's 25 minutes that you never have to do again. Like, that's powerful. You only had to say it one time, and we are going to document the entire process for you after that.
And you're going to
It's
document in a way where it lives online, right? It's accessible
yes.
to anybody on the team. And I know visually, because I can't remember if you showed me or if you just described it, but it sounds like one of the huge accomplishments of your software and your process is that it's visually very pleasing as well. Like, you, from a user experience standpoint, it's really designed thoughtfully compared to the old school, like, hunt
Black and
and
white
peck
text
for the
docs.
right document. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oops. Is this it? Nope. That's the old version. Right.
Right. Yes. So with Arvo, I mean, you nailed it. It's skimmable. We made it so that the person building it, they don't need to know how to design. They just need to know how to type, and they just
Mm.
need to know how to click a button. So it drops in the design for you, and you edit, type it, put it in there, or
So
upload your.
Arvo is you can do it yourself, like you
Mhm.
you plug yourself into the process, and then BGBO is helping you got it. Yep,
Yeah,
yep, yep.
yeah.
Helping
You
you
got it.
automate and do all that stuff.
Yeah, because attention spans, they're different.
Mm.
Now we're on our phones, we're on social media, we're used to things being digitally appealing all the time. And then what
Yes.
we noticed through our consulting is, well, then these people go to work and they're looking at long form text documents for the how to's, and like you think of
Right.
manual.
Ask me how many of my clients like actually read the legal, you know what I mean? Who wants to do that? Like, I live in the legal space and all I deal
Yeah,
with is
like
like
people
black
just like,
text on white
I'm just gonna
paper.
sign this.
Just gonna opt out. I'm gonna assume it's good.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
So that's why we built Arvo, is because we just saw this change in how people retain information, how they look for information, how they want to look at information, and to make that as easy as possible on the business, whether they just want to use the software or they
Mhm.
need us to help bridge that gap between, hey, I need the documentation, but I don't have the team to build it.
Yes. So did BGBO come first? You were doing the consulting, you were helping people with the processes, and then you developed the software as one of the tools to do that.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
named it, like, it's so funny because we named it BGBO Co. because like we weren't starting a company, like we were doing it in retirement. And people are always like, this is the hardest name to say. And I'm like, well, it is, but we weren't planning on doing anything. So it stands for biggest goal, biggest obstacle. And so, like, our
Oh.
idea was, we're going to go in and we're going to help companies with their biggest goal, biggest obstacle. We're going to call it BGBO Co. And now, like, people feel like it's a tongue twister. I'm like, we should probably do like a DBA or something. But it's so fun to talk
I
about.
like it. I like it, right? And then it has the story to go with it. I think it's funny. My sisters and I come up with acronyms for everything. I don't know how this started. Probably, I don't even know. But this is a really silly one, BNSEs. And like, we'll just have like our own language where people are like BNSEs. And we're like, yeah, back inside Chubbs, like,
Yeah, y'all got y'all's own language.
I personally love acronyms, and then when you get to tell the story, it makes it way more fun. I don't think you should rename BGBO Co. I like to say it.
Thank you.
Um, so I am curious because like there's a huge part of your story that my mind keeps wanting to go to, and this is the fact that
Okay.
you retired and then you
Oh,
came
okay.
out of retirement to build a business. I want to hear what you learned from retirement.
That retirement is really not as fun as you think it would be,
Right?
because I signed my contract to be done 3 days before I turned 35 years old.
Oh wow, retiring in
And we
our
had the
30s.
money in our account, we were retired, and, I did a lot of the things that I had been wanting to do, like, be a good mom to my son. Like, that was number 1, like, I am gonna be a great mom at this point. And so when he was 3 at that point, that kid, I will say, at this point, he is down for anything, like, because he just had to go with the flow for so long, like,
Mhm.
he adapts really well, so that is a plus. But, I now I get the luxury of prioritizing my time. It isn't where I
Yeah.
have to say, "Oh, I need to work or I need to be a mom." Like, I get to have that luxury because of what I've
Mm,
built before. Um, and I just realized for a while, I was sleeping in. I'd check my phone. I didn't have an email. I'm like, this is so weird. I'd go for long walks. My family and I did a ton of traveling and visiting friends and family we hadn't seen or taken the time to see in so long. But for me, it was also a depressing feeling because I have a lot more to give in
mm,
life.
yeah,
And I get energy from working, from being creative, from having new ideas. And so I didn't want to be retired. I
yeah,
just wanted to keep building. Like, have so much passion for building things and for being an entrepreneur that I just was like, I'm going to build something else.
yeah.
And so, I did out of retirement, I started building, I was doing BGBO Co. Um, and I was doing consulting, but during my time of my other company, I'd been playing around this idea called Burger Fit. And it's a burger company where you have meat burgers and you hide vegetables in them. And I had the idea because my brother and my dad would not eat any vegetable. And I was like, I'll show you, you old man, and my older brother. And it worked, and they were eating them. And so was starting to do this more and more, and called it Burger Fit. And I was like, I'm going to write a cookbook, and I'm going to go out into the world with Burger Fit. And that was such a tough business. I went down the manufacturing route of
Oh,
getting them
wow.
um, sold in grocery stores. I launched right before COVID hit. And oh my God, I was so, I mean, I, so when I sold my company, when I knew I needed to be done, I was having these autoimmune episodes where my face it would explode in like this giant round. It looked like I was having an allergic reaction, and my skin would
Oh,
just like turn into fire bites all over my face, and then all my skin would peel off. It was
oh my
so painful,
gosh.
and this started happening every week towards the end, and that's when I was like, okay, and I need to be done. Like, this is not healthy. It took me a while to that it was from chronic stress that I was
Mm,
under. And it happened twice during Burger Fit, and that's when I
mm,
knew that I didn't need to be doing it. And
just
I
not
I was
it.
about to be on TV the next morning at 4 a.m. I woke up and had another one of these episodes, and I wasn't in town where I live. I was 2 hours away, about to be on TV, and I couldn't go. I mean, I don't even look like the same person. I look like my friend calls me the Walking Dead when I'm having an
Oh my
episode.
gosh.
It's so bad. So
Mm,
when I had two back to back. I said, Burger Fit is not where I need to be doing. This is too stressful, and I'm putting myself under pain that I don't need to be on. And I was like, I have this other company that I love. I can do from
mm.
anywhere. I'm going to focus back on my consulting company. We're just launching Arvo, and I'm like, I can have passion there. And that's where I really learned you can have hobbies and you can have businesses, and they don't need to be the same thing.
Yes. Oh, so true. Well, and it's such a great example of what happens. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people, and in particular, a lot of women, because autoimmune tends to be higher occurring in women, can relate to that. And I know a ton of women who had autoimmune issues pop up during COVID just because of the
Yeah.
stress of trying to
Do
pack
so much.
everything into, yeah, do so much, and you just can't do it all. And so, what a powerful lesson of like really listening to your body and observing what's happening and making a different decision. It's my next question was going to be, given that we're on Guts Great Business, where have you hit those stopping points where you could have made a different choice, but you decided to keep going and not throw in the towel, or like this one, made a different decision. You kept going, but in a different way.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I go through that a lot on like not giving up
Mm.
because
Yeah.
especially in the other company where I was, and this was even before we got offered to sell the business, where I realized there were some days I just wanted to give up because I was burnt out. Raising a young, I had a son while I was running that company. We had offices in San Diego and Tennessee, and we were going back and forth, and it was just exhausting. And there were some days I just wanted to give up. And whatever, I'll have those bad days where I don't want to keep going. And I just let myself have that bad day. And then the next morning, I'm like, okay, Alane, are you serious about it? Because you need to make a change. Or were you just having a bad day and you're going to stick with it? And so most days I stick with it because I do enjoy it. Like, am I enjoying the work? And if not, that's a great thing about running a business is you can change what you're doing in the business.
Yeah. Oh, it's so well, and you've just described the path of entrepreneurship, right? Reaching these points where it's like, oh, not every day is a great day in business. It's just not. And
Um,
especially when life piles on or other things go wrong. And there's a lot of wisdom in what you said about just like letting yourself have that time and those feelings and moving through it. And I think it's hard when we do the opposite of like, put on that shiny happy face and just pretend like everything's great and everything's fine when it's not.
no,
We miss out on opportunities for other people to show up for us or to give us grace or to give us an idea or a tip or something that got them through.
yeah. I'll tell you the times that I've been the most vulnerable and said I needed help were the biggest wins that I've had. That I wasn't so scared to
Mm.
say that I'm struggling and I call one of my
Yeah.
friends. Being in a network of other business owners is a must. I didn't realize how much I needed that until I was in it and realized I before I didn't have it. And
Yeah.
so like I'm in EO and I went through the 10K, the Goldman Sachs 10,000 small business program. And now I have a huge network of business friends, that I can call and say, hey, I'm really struggling. And somebody always comes through.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That was total goosebumps. Oh, so much goodness. And I could just keep talking your ear right off, and I won't because we're well past the hour. For those of you who've not been with us on the breaks, my house cleaner showed up right as we were going to hit record. My kids have been like being crazy people in the background. And then Seattle City Light showed up and made me move cars in front of our house right in the middle. So it's been quite a time, Alane. I appreciate you sticking in
It
there
was
with
a
me.
fun ride. I enjoyed it. It's
Well,
so nice to know that other people's lives are chaotic. It's not just me.
totally, right? And so the funny thing over here in Seattle is like your kid is going back to school, right about now. And I have other girlfriends who are in the same boat, and we've still got a month of summer left.
Oh my
But
goodness.
we were in school until June 30th here,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So like it kind of feels like we're just starting summer, honestly.
Right. Yeah. You're just getting into the swing of it.
Right? So we've still got a little bit of chaos ahead for us. I laugh because summer, from a scheduling standpoint, is chaos. Alane, so fun to talk to you, hear about your story. You've shared so many insights that I think all of us can benefit from when we hit those hard days. And I love your point about asking for help. I think that's a really hard thing for a lot of people to do. I feel like that was a really great final point. And I'm still going to ask you a couple of last questions, which is one, for folks that want to connect with you, check out Arvo, check out BGBO Co. And I love saying that. Where do you like to send folks? And are you online? Are you a connector? Would you want people to connect with you like on socials or somewhere else online?
Yes, I'm active on LinkedIn. come and connect with me. I love doing that. The other social profiles I don't keep up with. So if
That's all
you,
right. I love LinkedIn
okay.
too. So that's
Yeah.
my number one. I agree. I agree. So we'll post your LinkedIn link. Folks, you can find her. We're going to post links to both of her companies as well as LinkedIn at the show notes page, which you can find at legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Pop over and leave us a review while you're at it and share this episode with somebody who you think would benefit from hearing from Alane today. Alane, what final thought or action step would you like to leave people with?
I think the most important thing that I've taught myself is just keep putting yourself out there and just keep trying. Put even if you're scared of what people are going to think, just keep doing it, because if no one knows what you're doing, you have no one to find you.
So true. Oh my gosh. And isn't it just a journey? Like sometimes I feel like I've reached points in business where I'm like, okay, I got this. And then I'm like, okay, I don't got this. I have
Yes.
to figure this out again or just keep doing it. It is. You just have to keep going. I love that. Alane, thank you so much for joining me today. So much fun to have you.
Thank you for having me.